It was a big day, a special event. We've been waiting for it for a while. Mind you, there aren't too many special occasions in Capernaum. The seasons come and go. There's a kind of pattern, a rhythm to life. The fishing expeditions out to sea, and then the long mornings sitting by the quayside, mending the nets and haggling with the people who come to buy the fish. Round midday, everyone shelters under the olive trees, and pretty soon the gaming boat comes out. Then for an hour or two the world comes to a standstill as everyone gathers around the board, and the two men spinning the dice and whisking their counters around the board as if their lives depended on it. Sometimes the boat needs repairing. A bit of pitch to seal a leak, or maybe a piece of timber needs replacing. The smaller jobs you can do yourself, but there are a few jobbing carpenters for the bigger jobs. I think that was how we first met Jesus. He was one of the better carpenters, but it wasn't his woodworking skills that attracted us to him. You see, at the end of the day, when the job was done and before going to bed, we would sit by the boats and he would tell us a story. He was a born storyteller. Even the gaming boards were forgotten when he came, and everyone gathered round. And in our imagination he would take us up into the mountains where shepherds fought with wild animals, or to the vineyards just outside Jerusalem. We never tired of hearing his stories. As I said, it was a special day. Jesus was going to preach in the synagogue for the first time. Simon took charge, as he always did. He'd persuaded his mother-in-law to cook a special celebration meal, and he invited us back to the house after the service. The Sabbath came. We put on our best clothes and made our way down to the synagogue. We gathered together in a group outside, watching one another nervously. We weren't too regular in the synagogue. Well, the preachers always preached the same message. We said it was all right for the women and the children. But the truth is, the longer we stayed away, the more frightened we were to go in. So we stood outside and watched and waited. Then Jesus came, and all of a sudden the tension disappeared. Laughing and joking, we made our way into the synagogue. The time came for Jesus to speak. He read from the scriptures. Then he put them to one side and began to talk. The atmosphere was electric. In our imagination, he took us back through time so that we saw standing alongside us the great patriarchs of Israel, eating and drinking, working, sleeping, doing all the kind of things that we do, and in the midst of it all, worshipping a God who was as real as you and I. This wasn't preaching, at least not the kind of preaching any of us had ever heard before. He opened up our minds, showed us things about ourselves that we hardly knew, gave us a vision of what we could become. Suddenly, like a discordant shriek in the middle of a beautiful melody, a voice came from the back of the synagogue. "Why are you here, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." It was the hermit who lived in the cave behind the village. The people were scared of him, said he was possessed by a demon. They left food at the entrance to the cave, hoping he would stay away. and most of the time he did. Why he'd come to the synagogue that morning, no one really knew. Gradually, people edged away from him, so that in the end, he was standing all alone in the middle of the synagogue, all eyes fixed on him. But Jesus, calmly but firmly said, "Be silent. Come out of him." The man fell to the ground in a fit, writhing and screaming on the floor, all eyes fixed on him. Then he fell silent. His body went limp. Gradually he raised himself to his feet and looked around. No one could believe the change in him. Gone was the wild, staring eyes, the shouting and the screaming. Standing there, he just looked so ordinary. After that, the people began to drift away from the synagogue in twos and threes, whispering among themselves and occasionally glancing back to look at Jesus. And in the end, there was just the group of us standing together by the door. I don't know whether the others noticed, but I could see how tired Jesus looked. It was as though the events in the synagogue had sapped all the energy from him. Then he turned and smiled and said, "Well, Peter, where's this meal then?" That was the thing about Jesus. One minute he could be doing something extraordinary. The next minute he was just like the rest of us, thinking about the next meal. He was a man, yes, but not just an ordinary man. Even in those early days, we could see that he was someone special.